Courtney Winslow thought she was protecting an exclusive charity gala from an unwanted guest, but before the evening ended, she would discover that the quiet woman standing outside the ballroom had changed more lives than every celebrated donor inside combined, and the realization would leave an entire room of influential people frozen in silence. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The Grand Crescent Hotel stood at the heart of downtown Boston, its crystal chandeliers glowing through enormous windows as luxury vehicles arrived one after another beneath the covered entrance. Inside, the annual Hope for Tomorrow charity gala was already attracting some of the city's most influential business leaders, philanthropists, and community figures. Elegant gowns swept across marble floors. Photographers captured smiling guests beneath golden lights. Conversations about donations, sponsorships, and fundraising targets filled the air. Tonight was expected to raise millions of dollars for educational programs across the country, and everyone attending seemed eager to be seen supporting the cause. At exactly 6:22 in the evening, Savannah Brooks stepped through the hotel's revolving doors. Unlike many of the guests arriving around her, she appeared remarkably ordinary. She wore a simple cream cardigan over a navy blue blouse, dark slacks, and comfortable shoes. Her blonde hair rested neatly on her shoulders. There were no designer labels, no jewelry meant to attract attention, and no entourage following behind her. To most people passing through the lobby, she looked less like a major donor and more like someone who had wandered into the wrong event by mistake. Across the registration area, Courtney Winslow noticed her immediately. As chairwoman of the gala committee, Courtney carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to making important decisions. Her tailored evening dress, polished smile, and commanding presence drew attention wherever she stood. Beside her was Lindsay Holloway, a well-known donor who rarely missed an opportunity to reinforce her social status. Both women glanced toward Savannah as she approached the registration desk. "Do you know her?" Lindsay asked quietly. Courtney studied Savannah for a moment before shaking her head. "No," she replied. "And I know every major donor attending tonight." The comment drew a faint smile from Lindsay. Nearby volunteers continued checking in guests while waiters carried trays of sparkling beverages through the lobby. Savannah stepped calmly toward the registration table where a young coordinator named Emma Reynolds greeted her warmly. "Good evening," Emma said. "Welcome to the gala." Savannah returned the smile. "Thank you. I am happy to be here." Emma began searching the guest list. A few seconds later, her expression changed. Not because she could not find the name, but because something about the registration details surprised her. Before she could say anything, Courtney moved closer. "Is there a problem?" she asked. Emma hesitated. "I am not sure yet." Courtney turned toward Savannah. Her smile remained polite, but something colder lingered beneath it. "May I ask who invited you to tonight's event?" Several nearby guests looked over. A few conversations slowed. Savannah answered calmly. "I received an invitation from the foundation." Courtney raised an eyebrow. Lindsay folded her arms. The first traces of skepticism appeared on several faces around them. Then Courtney glanced toward Emma's screen and quietly said a sentence that immediately changed the atmosphere in the lobby. "Then perhaps we should verify whether that invitation was actually meant for you." The question immediately altered the atmosphere around the registration desk. Conversations that had filled the hotel lobby only moments earlier began slowing as guests noticed the growing tension. Several donors standing nearby glanced toward Savannah Brooks. Others subtly turned their attention away while continuing to listen. In places like this, curiosity often traveled faster than courtesy. Savannah remained calm. "The invitation was sent directly to me," she replied. Her voice carried neither defensiveness nor frustration. It was simply a statement of fact. Courtney Winslow smiled politely, but the skepticism in her eyes became more visible. "I understand," she said. "However, this event has very strict attendance requirements." Lindsay Holloway stepped closer and looked Savannah up and down before speaking. "Most people attending tonight are longtime supporters of the foundation." The implication was clear. Savannah did not look like someone they expected to see among major donors. Emma Reynolds felt increasingly uneasy. She looked again at the registration screen. Savannah's name was there. Not only was it there, but several special notes appeared beside the entry. Yet the information seemed partially restricted. Every time Emma attempted to access additional details, the system blocked the request. She had never seen that happen before. Her name is definitely listed, Emma said carefully. Courtney glanced toward the screen. Listed under what category? Emma hesitated. I cannot see the full designation. Courtney folded her arms. Then we should proceed cautiously. Around them, more guests began arriving. Some paused to watch. A few recognized Courtney and naturally assumed she was handling a problem. The social pressure began building. Savannah noticed it. So did Emma. Yet neither woman stepped away. Perhaps there is someone from the foundation who can confirm my invitation, Savannah suggested. Courtney shook her head. The executive committee is already inside preparing for the presentation. Lindsay smiled faintly. If you were expected by the executive committee, someone would recognize you. A few nearby guests quietly laughed. The sound was not loud, but it carried. Savannah heard it. She showed no reaction. That calmness only seemed to frustrate Courtney further. Most people would have become embarrassed by now. Savannah simply remained composed. Emma found herself studying her more closely. There was something unusual about the way Savannah carried herself. She did not look nervous. She did not appear confused. She seemed completely certain she belonged there. Across the lobby, crystal chandeliers reflected warm light across polished marble floors, while a string quartet played softly near the ballroom entrance. The contrast felt strange. A celebration of generosity was taking place just a few feet away, yet one woman was being treated with growing suspicion simply because she did not match expectations. May I see your invitation? Courtney finally asked. Savannah reached into her handbag and produced a simple envelope. Several guests leaned closer. Courtney accepted it and opened the contents. For a brief moment, her expression shifted. The invitation appeared authentic. The paper quality, event seal, and formatting all matched official foundation correspondence. Then she noticed something else. There was no donor level listed anywhere on the document. Courtney immediately seized on the omission. Interesting, she said. Lindsay stepped beside her. What is it? Courtney handed her the invitation. No sponsorship classification. Lindsay looked pleased. That explains everything. Several nearby guests nodded as if the mystery had been solved. Emma did not look convinced. Something still felt wrong. Yet before she could speak, Courtney made a decision. She turned toward Savannah and raised her voice just enough for the surrounding donors to hear. If you truly belong at this event, she said, then I think it is only fair that you tell everyone here exactly what your connection to this foundation is. The question hung over the registration area like a spotlight. Guests who had been heading toward the ballroom slowed their steps. Others quietly gathered near the entrance, pretending to admire floral arrangements while listening closely. The charity gala had become the center of attention for an entirely different reason. Savannah Brooks stood calmly beside the registration desk while dozens of eyes settled on her. Courtney Winslow maintained her confident posture. Lindsay Holloway watched with visible curiosity. Emma Reynolds felt increasingly uncomfortable. She knew the situation was becoming unfair, yet she still lacked the confidence to challenge the people in charge. My connection to the foundation is personal, Savannah replied. Her voice remained calm and measured. Personal, Lindsay repeated with a faint smile. That sounds very different from being a donor. Several nearby guests chuckled softly. The laughter spread through the crowd. Savannah showed no sign of irritation. She simply met their eyes and remained composed. Courtney folded her arms. Tonight is about supporting important causes, she said. Many people in this room have contributed significant resources to make that possible. The implication was obvious. She wanted everyone to assume Savannah had contributed little or nothing at all. And that is admirable, Savannah answered. The people being helped are what matter most. The response should have ended the conversation. Instead, it seemed to encourage further skepticism. A donor standing nearby shook his head. Most major supporters usually mention their involvement. Another guest nodded, especially when there is confusion about their invitation. The pressure continued growing. Emma glanced at Savannah and noticed something unusual. Despite the crowd, despite the whispers, despite the public scrutiny, Savannah never looked frightened. It was almost as if she had experienced situations like this before. As the comments continued, Savannah reached into her handbag and removed a small leather card holder. Several people immediately focused on it. Courtney noticed as well. For a brief moment, she seemed to expect Savannah to finally reveal some credential proving her importance. Savannah opened the holder and looked at something inside. Her expression softened slightly. Then she closed it again and returned it to her bag. The movement lasted only a few seconds. Yet Emma noticed a glimpse of a silver embossed emblem on one of the cards inside. She did not recognize it, but something about it felt familiar. Before she could think further, Lindsay laughed lightly. Well, if there is proof in there, now would be a good time to show it. More guests smiled. Savannah shook her head. People should not have to prove their worth to strangers. For a moment, the crowd grew quiet. The answer carried a weight that some people felt immediately. Others ignored it completely. Courtney belonged firmly to the second group. She had spent too much of the evening building a narrative to abandon it now. Looking around at the gathered donors and guests, she realized she had an audience. And audiences often rewarded confidence. This event has standards, she said firmly. We owe it to our supporters to protect them from misunderstandings. The words drew approving nods from several people nearby. Emma felt her stomach tighten. The situation was moving beyond simple verification. It was becoming public humiliation. Savannah remained calm. Courtney took a slow breath and turned toward one of the hotel staff members stationed near the ballroom doors. Then she made a decision that immediately changed the atmosphere once again. Before anyone enters the ballroom, she announced loudly enough for the surrounding crowd to hear. I think we should verify whether Ms. Brooks is actually authorized to attend this event at all. The announcement immediately transformed the elegant hotel lobby into an uncomfortable spectacle. Guests who had originally come to celebrate generosity now stood watching a single woman being questioned in front of dozens of strangers. Conversations faded. The music from the string quartet continued softly in the background, but even that seemed distant compared to the tension gathering around the ballroom entrance. Courtney Winslow stood confidently beside the registration desk. Lindsay Holloway remained at her side. Several donors watched with growing curiosity. Others appeared uncomfortable, but said nothing. Savannah Brooks stood alone at the center of it all. A hotel manager approached after being summoned by one of the staff members. Courtney greeted him with a professional smile and quietly explained the situation. The manager listened carefully before turning toward Savannah. Ma'am, he said politely, there appears to be a question regarding your authorization for tonight's event. Savannah nodded. I understand. The manager looked uncertain. Unlike many others present, he seemed uncomfortable, making assumptions. Until the matter is resolved, we may need to ask you to remain outside the ballroom. The statement was delivered respectfully, but its meaning was impossible to ignore. She was being excluded. Publicly, several guests exchanged glances. A few whispered among themselves. Others simply watched. Emma Reynolds felt her heart sink. Everything about the situation felt wrong. Savannah's name was clearly on the list. The unusual restrictions attached to her registration continued to bother her. Yet the pressure created by Courtney and the donors had become too powerful for anyone to challenge openly. Courtney folded her arms. I think that is the appropriate decision. Lindsay nodded. The integrity of the event comes first. The words sounded noble, but something about them felt hollow. Savannah looked around the lobby. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm light across polished marble floors. Beautiful floral arrangements lined the entrance to the ballroom. Beyond the doors, laughter and conversation drifted through the air. An event dedicated to helping others was underway, yet compassion seemed strangely absent from the room. The manager shifted awkwardly. I am sorry for the inconvenience. Savannah offered him a gentle smile. You have nothing to apologize for. Her response surprised him. It surprised many people. Most individuals facing public embarrassment would have argued or demanded explanations. Savannah did neither. She simply accepted the moment with quiet dignity. Then she spoke. One of the most revealing things about people is not how they treat those they admire, she said softly. It is how they treat those they believe have nothing to offer them. The lobby fell silent. The words were calm, respectful, yet they carried a truth that settled heavily over everyone listening. For a brief moment, even Courtney seemed unsure how to respond. Emma lowered her eyes. Several donors shifted uncomfortably. The silence lasted only seconds, but it felt much longer. Then Savannah nodded politely to the manager. "Do not worry," she said. "I will step aside." Without another word, she turned away from the ballroom entrance. No anger. No resentment. No attempt to defend herself. Just quiet grace. As she walked through the lobby, the crowd gradually parted. Some people looked away. Others watched her go with expressions that had begun changing from skepticism to uncertainty. Emma followed her with her eyes until Savannah reached a quiet seating area beside a tall window overlooking the city. Evening lights were beginning to appear across Boston as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the skyline. Savannah sat down alone, folded her hands, and gazed out at the fading light. In the reflection of the glass, she appeared small compared to the grandeur of the hotel around her. Yet somehow she carried more dignity than anyone who had just turned her away. And while the ballroom doors closed behind the arriving guests, far above the city, a phone screen illuminated with a new, incoming message. Savannah Brooks remained seated beside the tall window long after the ballroom doors had closed. Beyond the glass, Boston shimmered beneath the deepening evening sky. Streetlights illuminated the avenues below, while the reflections of office towers stretched across the harbor. Around her, the luxury hotel continued operating as if nothing unusual had happened. Guests laughed. Music drifted through the lobby. Waiters moved between conversations carrying silver trays. Yet for Savannah, the evening had never been about prestige or recognition. It had always been about something far more personal. Resting quietly in her handbag was the same leather card holder she had carried for years. She removed it and opened it once more. Tucked behind several business cards was a small photograph, slightly worn from time. The picture showed a young girl standing beside her mother outside a modest apartment building. Savannah studied it for a moment and smiled softly. 20 years earlier, her family had struggled through one of the most difficult periods of their lives. After her father passed away unexpectedly, financial hardship nearly forced her mother to abandon the dream of keeping Savannah in school. Then a scholarship funded by a local charitable foundation changed everything. The assistance was not enormous. It simply arrived when hope was running out. That scholarship allowed Savannah to continue her education. Years later, it became one of the reasons she built a successful company. And after achieving success, she made a promise to herself. She would spend the rest of her life creating opportunities for others the same way someone had once created one for her. That promise eventually grew into educational programs, community initiatives, and countless scholarships. Very few people knew the full story. Savannah preferred it that way. Across the lobby, Emma Reynolds finally gathered enough courage to approach. She hesitated before sitting in a nearby chair. "May I join you?" she asked. Savannah smiled warmly. "Of course." For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Emma looked toward the ballroom entrance and sighed. "I still feel terrible about what happened." Savannah shook her head gently. "You noticed something was wrong. That matters." Emma lowered her eyes. "I should have done more." "Perhaps," Savannah replied kindly. "But courage grows over time. Nobody develops it all at once." The words seemed to ease some of the guilt Emma had been carrying all evening. She looked at Savannah with genuine admiration. "I do not understand how you remain so calm." Savannah glanced toward the photograph before returning it to her bag. "Because life has been kind to me in ways many people never see. When you remember that, it becomes easier to forgive moments like tonight." Emma smiled faintly. "I hope I learn to handle situations like that someday." "You will," Savannah said. "The fact that you care already puts you ahead of many people." Their conversation drifted into comfortable silence. For the first time all evening, Emma felt at peace. Then something changed. At first it was subtle. A hotel employee near the entrance suddenly straightened his posture. Several staff members exchanged quick glances. Outside the massive front windows, headlights swept across the driveway. The sound of multiple vehicle doors opening echoed through the entrance area. Conversations in the lobby began slowing. A few guests looked toward the front doors. Others paused in mid-sentence. Even inside the ballroom, attention seemed to shift. The atmosphere changed so quickly that people could feel it before they understood it. Emma looked toward the entrance. Savannah remained calm. Then the revolving doors turned, and a distinguished man stepped into the hotel surrounded by several senior members of a well-known charitable foundation. The entire mood of the building changed in an instant. The moment the distinguished man entered the hotel, The atmosphere throughout the lobby shifted in a way that was impossible to ignore. Conversation slowed. Hotel staff straightened immediately. Several guests recognized him before he had taken 3 steps inside. Nathaniel Grant, chairman of the Grant Foundation and one of the most respected figures in charitable philanthropy, was not scheduled to attend the gala until later in the evening. Yet there he was, walking through the entrance surrounded by senior foundation trustees and advisors. His arrival carried no dramatic display, no security spectacle, and no announcement. It did not need one. His reputation spoke for him. Emma Reynolds watched the reaction spread across the lobby. Donors turned their attention toward the entrance. Volunteers whispered among themselves. Even inside the ballroom, people began looking toward the doors. Nathaniel acknowledged several guests with polite nods, but did not stop to engage in conversation. Instead, his eyes moved slowly across the room as if searching for someone. Courtney Winslow noticed immediately. Her confidence returned for a moment. As chairwoman of the gala committee, she stepped forward with a welcoming smile. Lindsay Holloway followed closely behind. "Mr. Grant," Courtney said warmly. "What a wonderful surprise." Nathaniel shook her hand briefly. "Good evening, Courtney." The exchange lasted only a few seconds. Then his attention shifted elsewhere. His eyes settled on the quiet seating area beside the window. Emma noticed the change first. Nathaniel had found the person he was looking for. Across the lobby, Savannah Brooks calmly stood as he approached. The room seemed to hold its breath. Courtney watched in confusion as Nathaniel walked past her. Past Lindsay. Past several prominent donors. Past trustees and board members. He crossed the entire lobby without hesitation and stopped directly in front of Savannah. Then something happened that nobody expected. Nathaniel smiled. Not the polite smile reserved for public events. A genuine smile filled with warmth and respect. "Savannah," he said, "I am sorry I am late." The room went silent. Completely silent. Savannah smiled back. "You arrived exactly when you needed to." Several guests exchanged stunned looks. Courtney felt uncertainty settle into her stomach. Nathaniel Grant did not greet people this way. Certainly not strangers. Yet the familiarity between them was unmistakable. Emma watched as reality slowly began catching up with everyone around her. Nathaniel glanced toward the ballroom entrance. His expression changed slightly. "I heard there was a problem with your admission." Savannah remained calm. "A misunderstanding." Nathaniel nodded slowly. The answer told him everything he needed to know. Around the lobby, donors and trustees were beginning to notice the same thing. The woman they had spent the evening questioning was clearly someone Nathaniel considered important. Very important. Courtney felt her confidence slipping away. Lindsay suddenly looked much less certain than she had earlier. Nathaniel turned toward the registration area and briefly looked at the guest list displayed on Emma's screen. His expression remained composed. "Interesting," he said quietly. Then he looked back toward Savannah. "I suppose nobody explained who sent the invitation." The words landed heavily. Courtney froze. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Several trustees exchanged knowing glances. Something much larger than a simple registration error was unfolding. Nathaniel folded his hands and looked toward the ballroom where hundreds of guests continued gathering beneath crystal chandeliers. Then he spoke a single sentence that seemed to stop time itself. "The woman you left outside is the reason this gala exists at all." For several seconds after Nathaniel Grant spoke, nobody moved. The lobby seemed suspended in silence. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above hundreds of guests, yet all attention remained fixed on the woman who had been sitting quietly beside the window only moments earlier. Courtney Winslow felt the certainty she had carried throughout the evening disappear completely. Lindsay Holloway stared at Savannah Brooks as if seeing her for the first time. Around them, donors, trustees, volunteers, and hotel staff exchanged stunned glances. Nathaniel remained calm. He was not interested in creating a spectacle. He simply believed the truth deserved a place in the room. "Many of you know about the educational initiatives funded through this foundation," he said. "What most of you do not know is who made many of those initiatives possible." A hush settled across the lobby. Nathaniel looked toward Savannah before continuing. 5 years ago, when scholarship funding began shrinking, Savannah created a private program that quietly provided support for thousands of students. She requested complete anonymity. Several donors visibly reacted. The scholarship program was well known throughout the charitable community. Few people knew who had financed it. Nathaniel continued. Since then, her organization has funded mentoring programs, community learning centers, emergency educational grants, and countless opportunities for families who would otherwise have been overlooked. Murmurs spread through the crowd. The realization was beginning to take hold. The woman they had questioned all evening was not merely a guest. She was one of the most significant contributors to the very mission they claimed to support. Emma Reynolds finally found the courage she had been searching for. I knew something was unusual about the registration file, she said softly. Several people turned toward her. The system would not let me access the details. I have never seen that before. Nathaniel nodded. Because her participation was designated confidential by the foundation. The confirmation only deepened the shock. Courtney lowered her eyes briefly. Every assumption she had made now seemed painfully visible. Yet the revelations were not finished. Nathaniel folded his hands and looked around the room. There is something else you should know. The crowd grew even quieter. The scholarship that changed Savannah's life when she was a young girl was funded through this foundation. After achieving success, she chose to spend years quietly helping others receive the same opportunity she once received. Several guests looked toward Savannah with entirely new expressions. The room that had once viewed her with suspicion now viewed her with admiration. Yet Savannah appeared almost uncomfortable with the attention. She stepped forward before Nathaniel could continue. That is enough, she said gently. Nathaniel smiled and nodded. He understood. Savannah looked around the lobby. Her eyes moved from the donors to the volunteers, from the hotel staff to the trustees. Finally, they settled briefly on Courtney. There was no anger in her expression, no desire to embarrass anyone. Tonight should not become about proving someone wrong, she said calmly. It should remain about helping people. The words landed softly, but their impact was enormous. Several donors lowered their eyes. Others nodded slowly. Savannah continued. Every person who supports a good cause deserves appreciation. But every person who arrives at a charitable event deserves dignity, whether they are giving money, receiving help, or simply showing up with good intentions. The room went silent again. Not because people were shocked this time, because they understood. Courtney felt the lesson more deeply than anyone. Savannah had every opportunity to expose her mistakes publicly. Instead, she chose grace. That choice changed everything. The crowd no longer saw a woman in a simple cardigan waiting outside a ballroom. They saw a leader who had quietly opened doors for thousands of people without asking for recognition. And as the reality finally settled across the hotel lobby, the way everyone looked at Savannah Brooks changed forever. The atmosphere inside the Grand Crescent Hotel remained quiet long after Savannah Brooks finished speaking. Something fundamental had changed. The same guests who had once watched her with suspicion now looked at her with genuine respect. Conversations resumed, but the tone was different. People spoke more carefully. They listened more attentively. Even the ballroom itself seemed transformed. Nathaniel Grant stood near the entrance and looked around the room. Tonight has taught us something important, he said calmly. A charitable organization cannot claim to serve people if it fails to recognize dignity when it stands directly in front of it. No one argued. No one needed to. The lesson had already revealed itself. Courtney Winslow remained silent. Lindsay Holloway stood beside her, equally subdued. Neither woman attempted to defend what had happened. The facts spoke clearly enough. Yet Savannah had no interest in turning the evening into a public punishment. She stepped forward before anyone could suggest consequences driven by embarrassment. I would like to make a request, she said. The room immediately focused on her. Nathaniel nodded. Please. Savannah glanced toward the volunteers, hotel staff, and foundation representatives gathered throughout the ballroom. Every future event should include training that reminds organizers to welcome people before evaluating them. Several trustees exchanged approving looks. Savannah continued. No donor, volunteer, scholarship recipient, staff member, or guest should ever feel that their appearance determines their value. The statement received immediate support. Board members nodded. Foundation leaders quietly agreed. What could have become a moment of personal revenge instead became a moment of institutional improvement. Nathaniel smiled. That recommendation will be implemented. A soft wave of applause spread throughout the ballroom. Then Savannah looked toward Emma Reynolds. The young coordinator immediately seemed surprised by the attention. There is someone else who deserves recognition tonight, Savannah said. Emma shook her head slightly, already uncomfortable being noticed. Savannah smiled warmly. Emma noticed something was wrong from the beginning. She cared enough to question what others accepted. Several guests looked toward Emma. Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully. Character often reveals itself in small moments. One of the trustees stepped forward. We have been searching for additional members to join our foundation leadership development program. Emma looked stunned. I'm not sure I am qualified. Savannah laughed softly. Most truly qualified people say exactly that. The room filled with gentle laughter. The tension finally began dissolving. By the end of the conversation, Emma had accepted an invitation to participate in the program. The opportunity would open doors she had never imagined possible. Yet the greatest change occurred elsewhere. Courtney stood quietly near one of the ballroom columns, watching everything unfold. No one humiliated her. No one mocked her. No one demanded an apology. In many ways, that made the lesson more powerful. Throughout the evening, she had measured people by visibility, status, and presentation. Yet the woman who had contributed more than almost anyone in the room had arrived without seeking recognition. The woman with the greatest influence had shown the greatest humility. Courtney watched guests approach Savannah with sincere gratitude. Volunteers thanked her. Donors spoke with newfound respect. Scholarship recipients attending the event smiled warmly as they learned who had quietly supported programs that changed lives. None of it was driven by wealth. It was driven by character. For the first time that evening, Courtney understood the difference. Looking across the ballroom beneath the crystal chandeliers, she realized something that would remain with her long after the gala ended. The most generous people are often the least interested in being seen, and the easiest way to overlook greatness is to spend too much time looking for it in all the wrong places. As the evening drew closer to its end, the Grand Crescent Hotel felt warmer than it had at any point during the gala. The tension that once dominated the ballroom had been replaced by genuine conversations, renewed purpose, and a deeper understanding of what the event was meant to represent. Guests continued gathering beneath the crystal chandeliers, but now many of them were discussing opportunities, scholarships, and community programs rather than social status or donor rankings. Savannah Brooks stood near one of the ballroom windows overlooking the city lights. In her hands rested the small photograph she had carried throughout the evening. For years, it had reminded her why she chose to give quietly rather than seek recognition. Looking at it now, she felt something she had not expected when she arrived that evening. Peace. Not because her identity had been revealed, not because people finally knew what she had done, but because the mission that had begun with one scholarship and one struggling family was continuing to grow. Nathaniel Grant approached with 2 glasses of sparkling water and handed one to her. Your father would be proud, he said softly. Savannah smiled. My mother always said the same thing whenever I doubted myself. Nathaniel nodded. Then she was right. Across the ballroom, Emma Reynolds was speaking with foundation trustees and development directors. The opportunity offered earlier had already become official. Several people welcomed her into discussions about future leadership programs and community outreach initiatives. She still seemed surprised by the attention, but her confidence had begun to grow. Savannah watched with quiet satisfaction. Emma had earned every bit of it. Sometimes the greatest reward was simply making sure the right person received a chance. A few minutes later, Courtney Winslow slowly approached. The room did not fall silent. No audience gathered around them. The moment was private, which made it far more meaningful. Courtney stopped in front of Savannah and took a slow breath. For the first time all evening, there was no trace of authority in her posture. Only honesty. I owe you an apology, she said. Savannah listened quietly. I judged you before I knew anything about you. I assumed appearances told me everything I needed to know. They did not. Courtney lowered her eyes briefly. What happened tonight was my responsibility. I accepted assumptions instead of asking questions. I am sorry. There were no excuses. No attempts to explain her behavior away. She accepted the lesson fully. Savannah respected that. Thank you, she replied gently. Learning from a mistake is more important than pretending it never happened. Courtney nodded. The new procedures being implemented will start with me. Savannah smiled warmly. Then something good came from tonight. For a moment, both women simply stood there. Not as rivals. Not as opponents. As 2 people who understood something they had not understood before. Courtney extended her hand. Savannah shook it. The gesture was simple, but sincere. Nearby, guests continued enjoying the evening. Scholarship recipients met mentors. Donors discussed new initiatives. Volunteers shared stories about the communities they served. The gala had become what it was always meant to be, a celebration of opportunity. Later, as the evening came to a close, Savannah stepped outside onto the hotel terrace. Cool Boston air greeted her. The city skyline stretched across the horizon, glowing beneath the night sky. She looked down once more at the photograph of the young girl and her mother. Years ago, one act of kindness had changed their future. Tonight, she had witnessed countless opportunities for that kindness to continue. She slipped the photograph back into her card holder and smiled. Behind her, the ballroom remained filled with hope. Ahead of her, countless lives still waited to be helped. And that night, everyone remembered that true generosity is not measured by how much you give. It is measured by how much dignity you leave behind.